Welcome to the Cheating and Love Tales channel. The hush is absolute, except for the slow pounding behind my ribs. It's like a cramp in my heart, a clenched fist that refuses to let go. My lungs tighten, and for a few seconds, I fight for breath. Rain patters against the roof, each drop magnified in the quiet. I'm standing by the front window, forehead near the glass, looking out at nothing in particular. The darkness beyond the porch hides everything except the street lamp's faint glow on the curb. You'd think I'd get used to this ache, but it returns, night after night, with military precision. I step back and close my eyes. My fingers press into my sternum. Sometimes it feels like if I rub the spot hard enough, maybe I can push the pain away. But I can't. It just sits there, a reminder of what I know and what I can't forget. I don't remember when the rain started, maybe an hour ago, maybe two, but it's fitting. I want to replay in my mind how it all went wrong. Maybe if I go through it carefully, like a detective reconstructing a crime scene, I can see the moment it all cracked. But right now, the only thing that's clear to me is the t-shirt I saw in her suitcase. A man's t-shirt. Not mine. I should have screamed when I found it. That's what a lot of men would do. Raise their voice, throw accusations, rage. But anger makes you blind, and I need to see everything clearly. So I stayed silent, and I stayed calm. I confronted her with the coldness of a surgeon laying open a chest cavity, methodical and precise. I'm a journalist by trade. Investigative work. I've always believed that if you dig deep enough, you'll find the truth. And sometimes, the truth is sharper than any scalpel. That day, I used my reporter's instincts on my own wife. Elena was packing for what she claimed was a short consulting trip. She'd done that countless times before. Short notices, business casual clothes thrown together with anxious hands. Usually, I wouldn't think twice. I trusted her. But that morning, I noticed something was off. She was too careful, folding clothes in neat little squares. Her eyes flicked my way as I walked into the bedroom. Maybe she expected me not to look too closely. Maybe she hoped I'd vanish into the other room. Instead, I stood there and watched. I saw the t-shirt in her bag. Men's size, bigger than I wear. A plain black tee with no logo, soft from too many washes. She froze for a moment when she realized I was looking straight at it. I remember the swift change in her expression. Her lips parted. Her fingers curled around the fabric, and she exhaled just a fraction too late. A tell. She tried to say something. Oh, that's... But I shut her down with a raised hand. I picked it up, held it out between us, studied it like evidence. Not mine, I said. She swallowed. It's nothing. Maybe I packed it by mistake. We stared at each other for a full 10 seconds. She doesn't scare easily. I know that now. She's used to danger. But there was something in her eyes that day. Maybe guilt. Maybe fear. She was trying to figure out how to spin it. But I saw the shift in her stance, the rigidness in her shoulders. She was preparing to fight. I closed the suitcase with a firm click. I want an explanation. I said, but I don't want lies. She set her jaw. And for a moment, I thought she'd come clean. Instead, she walked out into the hallway, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I didn't yell. I didn't slam doors. I simply tucked that t-shirt under my arm and followed her. Downstairs, the house felt colder, or maybe that was just me. I found her by the kitchen island, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. She stared at the floor, lips a thin line. Explain, I said again. My voice sounded so normal. It scared me how calm I felt. Inside, my stomach churned like I'd swallowed shards of glass, but the words came out steady. Whose is it? She looked up, met my eyes. It's complicated, Michael. She used my name, which she rarely does in casual conversation. That alone told me she felt cornered. Try me. My arms felt heavy. There was a tension in my neck. If I'd let it, it would have turned into anger, maybe even rage. But I held it in check. Alina inhaled sharply. "It belongs to a friend," she began, clearly improvising. We worked on a project together. I must have ended up with it after. I cut her off. "Stop." Silence. The rain hammered on the windows. The hum of the refrigerator was the only other sound. I almost smiled at how cinematic it all was. I felt like a detective in a slow-burning thriller, forcing the suspect into a corner. She didn't twitch, but her eyes darted around the room like she was searching for an exit. "You're lying," I said. "At least have the decency to admit it." She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The stare we exchanged was a standoff that seemed to last forever. I've looked into criminals' eyes before, people caught in a web of corruption. Sometimes they lash out, sometimes they break down. But Alina had been trained to keep secrets. She was good at it, so good that I hadn't suspected a thing for years. Finally, I took a slow step toward her, my voice low. "This is someone else's t-shirt. You're seeing someone else." She flinched, but still said nothing. So I gave her a nod, a cold acceptance. I took the t-shirt, pressed it against her chest, then let it fall to the countertop. "Go on. Tell me it's not true. Tell me I'm making this up. If you can look me in the eye and say that, I'll believe you." Her eyes flicked to the t-shirt, then to me. She parted her lips, and for a second, I thought she'd protest. But she didn't. Instead, her shoulders slumped. That slight sag told me everything I needed to know. I turned and walked away before she could see the pain in my eyes. The next day, I kept my distance. My chest felt tight, and I struggled to breathe whenever I thought about it. She left for her business trip anyway. The last thing she said to me was a hollow "I'll be back soon." I just stared at her, refusing to say goodbye. She's an agent, all right. Covert intelligence. If I'd known it then, maybe I would have followed her. Maybe I would have discovered the truth sooner. But I was in denial. Part of me still wanted to believe there was some harmless explanation. Except that night, I caught a plane. I have sources, connections. Journalists learn how to track people down if they need to. My job has taught me that the world is smaller than we think, and secrets unravel if you tug on the right string. She flew to Austin first. I stayed 3 steps behind, observing. Then she disappeared onto a connecting flight to Los Angeles. I followed. I didn't even pack a proper bag. All I had was the clothes on my back, my wallet, phone, and a growing sense of dread. In Leh, the rain found me again. Maybe it was chasing me, or maybe I was chasing it. When I landed, my chest ached so badly I had to sit down near a coffee kiosk at the airport. It took me a few minutes to catch my breath. People hurried by, ignoring the man slumped over with a hand against his sternum. The rest of the day was a blur of phone calls and discreet messages to sources. Alina had checked into a modest hotel downtown. I booked a room in the same place under a different name. I checked in after midnight. The corridor carpet smelled stale. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I made my way to the room number I pried from the front desk clerk's late shift confusion. Room 314. My head felt like a lead weight. The chest pain spiked again. I hovered near the door, straining to hear. Muffled voices came through the thin walls. One male, one female. I couldn't catch the words, but I knew my wife's tone. It was hushed, intense, like she was giving instructions. Then came a pause, some shuffling, a low laugh. The kind of throaty laugh you share with a partner, not a colleague. My breath caught in my throat. My feet felt stuck to the worn carpet. I remember placing one hand on the door, gently, as if that would let me sense the vibrations better. It was an idiotic gesture, but I couldn't help it. The next thing I heard, the small, intimate sounds, left no doubt. She was in there with him, and they weren't discussing spreadsheets. Even with my mind screaming at me to walk away, I pressed my ear closer. Each soft moan, every hitch of breath, hammered into my chest. I'd never heard her like that before, or maybe I had, but only in the distant past. back when our marriage was new. The memory of that intimacy, once ours, now turned my stomach. I don't know how long I stood there. A minute. 5. The corridor was empty except for the flickering light at the far end. My heart pounded so hard that it drowned out the sounds in the room. My body trembled. But I didn't let out a single gasp. I stayed there, silent, steeling myself to accept what was happening. I closed my eyes and let the cold knowledge wash over me. Eventually, I stepped away and walked outside into the night. The rain battered me on the sidewalk, but I barely noticed. All I could see were images in my head. A college of her hair spread across hotel pillows, someone else's hands on her hips, her lips parted in a pleasure I hadn't known in a long time. 1,000 images that tore at my insides. I didn't break. I didn't cry. I just stood in the downpour, numb, until the chill seeped into my bones. Later, in my own dreary room down the hall, I sat on the bed, turned off all the lights, and stared at nothing. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioner. My phone buzzed a few times, but I ignored it. My mind kept replaying those soft moans and that quiet laughter. My wife, with another man. The t-shirt in her suitcase was just the tip of the iceberg. I let the hours slip by until dawn tinted the horizon. Then I quietly gathered myself. I still felt the dull cramp in my chest, the intangible pressure. But I had a plan forming. I had to know more. I needed facts. In my line of work, we say, never confront a suspect without the evidence that can break them. So I texted an old contact of mine, a private investigator named Loretta. She owed me a favor from a story we worked a few years back. By noon, she'd called with preliminary intel. Alina's consulting trips were all over the country, often near major intelligence or law enforcement hubs. A pattern, sure, but I needed more than that. I took a risk and did something I'd sworn I'd never do, used my press credentials to dig into clandestine databases. The details that trickled out were shocking. My wife was on some government payroll under a different identity. She had multiple travel records that didn't align with her supposed business trips. One name kept popping up: Nathan Pierce. I saw flights, accommodations, receipts from bars where they'd been spotted together. When I told Loretta about Nathan, she cursed under her breath. That's one guy you don't want to corner, Mike. He's a freelancer, ex-private security, possibly CIA adjacent. He's not the type you threaten with a lawsuit. I ended the call, my hand shaking. It made sense. Alina had a master's in international relations. She always joked about how someday she'd change the world. I didn't realize she was deadly serious. The idea that my wife was a covert agent, entangled in intelligence operations, made me nauseous. And she was in bed, literally, with someone else. Maybe it was an assignment, or maybe it was a real affair. In that moment, I couldn't tell which was worse. They checked out of the hotel around lunch. I hid behind a column in the lobby, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, just enough to go unnoticed. I watched them emerge from the elevator, walking side by side. Alina had her suitcase in one hand, phone in the other, her face carefully blank. Nathan was tall, lean, scanning the area like a watchdog. He glanced in my direction, but I turned away before he spotted me. Then they were gone, out the sliding doors into the California sunshine. I followed them to the airport in a rental car. They split up at security. I took a few pictures with my phone, feeling like a detective tailing a suspect. Alina boarded a plane for Washington. Nathan waited an hour longer, boarded a flight to who knows where. I didn't attempt to follow him. My business was with her. On my own return flight, the turbulence matched the turmoil in my head. Anger warred with heartbreak, but I kept them both locked down. The man across the aisle dozed off. A flight attendant offered me water. I refused with a curt shake of my head. Inside, all I could hear were the echoes of that hotel room. Her low moan, his quiet laugh. It felt like a razor blade pressing into my heart. When I got home, the house was dark. Rain dripped from the eaves again, as though it followed me across the country. I stepped inside, half expecting to see Elena waiting. But everything was silent. My chest tightened once more. I flicked on the lamp in the living room, and there she was, standing near the window, back turned. She didn't jump. She must have heard me come in. Slowly, she pivoted, wearing the same neutral expression I'd seen in LA. The tension hung between us like a fog. I didn't bother taking off my jacket. I set my keys on the table, each movement deliberate. Neither of us spoke for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I let out a breath. "I saw you," I said. A muscle in her jaw twitched. "Where?" "In Los Angeles, room 314. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, then opened them. "Michael, please." I raised a hand to stop her. "I'm not interested in your excuses. I followed you, Elena. I know you're with this Nathan Pierce. I know you're lying about your job." She swallowed hard, searching my face. "Let me explain." My voice remained cold. "Go ahead. I'm listening." And so she told me. Not everything. She kept plenty of details to herself. But enough. Enough to piece together how she'd been recruited into intelligence work, how she'd spent the last several years chasing leads, forging relationships undercover. She claimed Nathan was just an assignment, and objective. That she never meant to hurt me, that the physical side of things was part of the deception. Her role required her to get close to him, gain his trust. That it meant nothing, she said. "A job," she said. I let her talk. My throat felt dry. Her words sounded rehearsed, each sentence polished. Maybe it was the truth, or maybe just enough of it to keep me from losing my mind. But I'd heard her voice in that hotel room. There was something deeper between them, something that stretched beyond mere professional duties. In my mind, I saw them entwined, her face pressed against his, the hush of the night broken by their whispers. My fist clenched involuntarily, nails digging into my palm. She finished talking and looked at me, eyes pleading. She half raised a hand as if to touch my shoulder. I stepped back. "So that's all it is. An assignment. A mission." My tone was lifeless. "Why not tell me?" "Because I couldn't," she said. "Classified." I had no choice. I almost laughed. "Classified." "Right." She opened her mouth, then closed it. She knew how absurd it sounded in this context. A marriage shouldn't be overshadowed by government secrets, by clandestine affairs. But here we were. "You've been lying for years, Elena. To me, to everyone around you." My voice shook momentarily, but I forced it steady. "Does he love you? Does he know who you really are?" She shook her head, tears gathering in her eyes. "I don't care about him. I swear. It's just business." For a moment, something inside me twisted, wanting so badly to believe her, but I couldn't forget that night at the hotel. "Business," I repeated. "Right." My heart hammered. I walked to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a blank mask. It was a mold of her face, an odd gift I once got her from a traveling art exhibit. She joked about how eerie it was to have a perfect cast of her own features. Now, I gripped it and turned back to her. "Wear it," I said. My voice dropped to a near whisper. "I want to see the truth." Her hands trembled when she took it. Slowly, she lifted it to her face. In the dim light, it looked like she was layering one face over another. Through the eye holes, she stared at me, her real eyes raw with guilt or shame or fear. I couldn't tell, but there were no tears. It reminded me of a Greek tragedy mask, stony and pale. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken. "I have proof. Of everything." My gaze flickered to her. "Our neighbors, my colleagues, everyone will know what you did. And why." "Michael." Her voice cracked under the mask. I slipped the phone in my pocket. "This is the life you chose. Now you pay the price." She inhaled sharply. "Don't. Please." But I was done talking. I moved to the front door, yanked it open. The rain greeted us with cold splashes. I grabbed her elbow, careful but firm, and walked her onto the porch. She stumbled slightly on the top step, the mask still on her face, a silent, faceless figure. "Michael, I'm begging you." She tried to steady herself, water beginning to drip from her hair. I had to do it. For my job. 4. I pushed her forward until she stood at the edge of the porch, teetering between shelter and the storm. The neighbor's porch light flicked on, revealing the silhouette across the street. I made sure they could see us. See her. She tried to shield her face with one hand, but it was too late. "Now they know," I said softly, my voice trembling with something that wasn't quite anger anymore. "I told them the truth, or at least enough of it. You're a double life. Lies layered on lies. You've destroyed what we had." She was shaking, whether from cold or fear, I couldn't tell. The front yard glistened with water, the street a dark river of reflection. For an instant, she reached for my hand. But I pulled back and slammed the door shut, locking her out in the rain. Alone, I pressed my back against the door, chest burning. My heartbeat roared in my ears. She pounded on the wood, her muffled voice crying my name. I let my eyes slide shut, breathing hard, counting the seconds until the noise died down. My mind was a battlefield of swirling thoughts. The image of her with him, the possibility that I'd just destroyed the life we once shared. When she finally stopped pounding, I exhaled. My legs trembled as I climbed the stairs to our bedroom. The hallway felt longer than usual. My mind flicked to the t-shirt again, that black cotton betrayal. If I stared at my reflection right now, I'd see a broken man, or maybe a monster. But I refused to look in the mirror. I crawled into bed fully dressed, listening to the rain lash the windows, imagining her silhouette out there on the porch. As I lay still, the pain in my chest twisted in deeper. I didn't want to die, not literally, but something in me had definitely died tonight. A dream, a hope, a trust. I had exposed her secrets to the neighbors, to the world. Now she would face the fallout, and I'd have to live with my own part in it. That should have been the end of it, but deep down, I knew it wasn't over. The real storm had only just begun. I woke at sunrise, stiff and disoriented. The house was quiet, no sign of Elena. The duvet under me felt damp from my soaked clothes. Every joint ached. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up with notifications. Probably messages from neighbors or colleagues, their curiosity piqued by the spectacle on my porch last night. I ignored it and sank back into the pillow, trying to breathe. My chest was heavy again, like a block of concrete. Eventually, I forced myself upright. I peeled off the damp clothes, tossed them aside, and took a shower. The hot water stung, but I let it. I hoped it would wash away the memory of her voice, the feel of her arm in my grip, the sight of that mask. It didn't. The images remained, etched into my mind like scars. Downstairs, the living room was dim. The only light leaked through the closed curtains. I considered opening them, but hesitated. I wasn't sure I wanted to see if she was still out there. Instead, I made a pot of coffee. The routine steadied my hands. I drank one cup, then another, chasing the bitterness with the aim of waking up fully. My phone vibrated on the counter, unknown number. I answered by force of habit, professional reflex kicking in. "Michael Stevenson," I said, voice still raspy from lack of sleep. Silence on the other end. Then a low voice spoke. "We need to meet." I recognized that drawl. Nathan. My grip on the phone tightened. "How'd you get this number?" I asked calmly, even though my pulse leaped. Images of him with Elena flashed through my mind. Her hands on his shoulders, their whispers in the dark. He ignored the question. "She told me what happened. This changes everything. Where can we talk?" For a moment, I just listened to the static hum. My chest twinged. "I'm not interested in talking to you." "I understand," he said quietly, "but you've made her a liability. You exposed her. That puts us all in danger. She's out of time." A bolt of anger shot through me. Don't lecture me on time or danger. You're the one, whoa. 15 minutes. He cut in. I'll text you an address. Before I could respond, the line went dead. A second later, a message pinged my phone with an address near the outskirts of town, some abandoned lot. I stared at it, adrenaline surging. Part of me wanted to smash the phone. The other part recognized an opportunity. I'm a journalist, after all. Gathering the puzzle pieces is what I do. I downed the rest of my coffee, ignoring the burn in my throat, and changed into dry clothes. My mind churned with questions. If I met him, would it be a trap? Would he try to silence me or coerce me into keeping my mouth shut? I almost felt a grim fascination, a part of me stepping outside myself to watch the drama unfold. I was a man with nothing left to lose. My marriage was in tatters, my trust shattered. If this confrontation gave me some clarity, some closure, I was willing to risk it. I slipped a small digital recorder into my pocket, out of habit. Then I grabbed my keys and headed out. The morning sky was still gray and heavy with clouds, as though the rain was just waiting for a chance to fall again. The address led to an industrial parking lot on the edge of town, scattered with rusted shipping containers. A chain-link fence surrounded the perimeter. Weeds poked through the cracks in the asphalt. I spotted a black SUV idling by a graffiti-stained wall. Nathan stood outside, hands in his jacket pockets, scanning the area like a guard dog. He caught sight of my sit-in and motioned for me to pull up. I parked a few feet away, engine running. For a moment, I considered leaving it in gear and speeding off. But the desire for answers outweighed my caution, so I killed the ignition and stepped out, squinting against the sharp breeze. Up close, Nathan looked every bit the operative. Tall, lean, a faint scar along his cheek. There was a calm in his eyes that put me on edge, like he'd seen all of this before. He nodded at me in greeting, but I stayed silent. "I appreciate you coming," he said. I shoved my hands into my pockets, ignoring the slight trembling in my fingertips. "I'm not here for pleasantries. Talk." He exhaled, glancing around to ensure we were alone. "Belinda's cover is blown. When you exposed her in front of your neighbors, you practically rang a bell for anyone watching her. I can't protect her if the agency decides she's compromised." I snorted. "Protect her? You think I care about her safety after what she's done to me?" His jaw tightened. "I'm not here to defend the personal side of things, but she's in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that ends in a ditch. She needs to disappear, for her own sake." A wave of nausea hit me. Even after everything, the idea of her being hunted down like some rogue spy turned my stomach. She should have thought about that before screwing around. He pressed his lips together. "You don't understand how these things work. She wasn't just playing me. There were bigger stakes. If the agency suspects she's become an unreliable asset." "Stop," I said. My voice came out harsh. "I don't want your excuses or your pity." She lied. "You both lied." He held my gaze for a moment. "It was never personal." "Like hell it wasn't." I almost laughed. "I heard you in that hotel room, remember? That sounded pretty damn personal to me." Nathan shifted his weight. "I'll admit, sometimes lines blur, but that doesn't change the fact that we were operating under orders. She can't just walk away from an unfinished operation, especially now." My chest clenched again, the pain flaring up. I forced a slow breath. "What do you want from me?" "Your silence," he said bluntly. "I need you to keep your mouth shut about her double life, at least for now. Damage control, so we can get her out safely." I let out a bitter laugh. "You think I owe you that?" "No," he replied. "I'm asking because she still matters to you on some level. Otherwise, you would have let me or someone else kill her by letting that story break wide open. If you hated her that much, you'd have gone to the press, your colleagues, plastered her face everywhere. You haven't done that. Yet. So maybe there's still part of you that doesn't want her dead." My heart pounded in my ears. I should do exactly that. Why shouldn't I? He took a small step forward, his expression serious. because then you'd be dragging yourself into a game you can't win. She has a target on her back now. Trust me, you don't want that same target pinned to your chest. For a moment, I didn't respond. The wind rattled the chain-link fence, and a crow cawed from somewhere behind the containers. My mind flashed back to Elena on the porch, wearing that mask, the rain soaking her hair. I remembered the edge in her voice when she begged me not to expose her fully. She was scared, truly scared, I now realized. Not just of me, but of what her own employers might do. Something in me twisted, a conflict between hurt and lingering loyalty. "Let me guess," I said. "You want me to let her slip away, vanish off the grid, and pretend I saw nothing?" Nathan nodded. "Yes. In return, you'll never see or hear from us again. She can vanish, and you can move on." My jaw clenched. "Move on," I echoed, feeling a dull ache near my sternum. What if I don't want to move on? What if I want justice? He gave me a level look. "What kind of justice?" I exhaled, my breath shaky. "She betrayed me. You both did. You made me into a fool. Everyone in my neighborhood probably thinks I'm a lunatic now, or worse. I want retribution. Then get it some other way, because going nuclear on her will just blow back on you." The two of us locked eyes. For a long moment, I contemplated punching him. He was bigger, but I had enough pent-up anger to at least give it a shot. Yet my body refused to act. Instead, I reached into my jacket, pulling out the phone with the evidence. Photos, audio snippets, everything I'd collected. Nathan tensed. "What are you doing?" I held the phone up. "I have what I need to destroy her career, and probably yours. If I put this out there, you can't stop me." His eyes narrowed. "But you haven't." "Why?" I swallowed, feeling my pulse throb in my temples. I didn't know how to answer. Because part of me still wanted closure. Because I wasn't a killer or a sadist. Because, deep down, the memories of our marriage, the good times, still mattered to me. I lowered the phone. "I need time to think," I said quietly. Nathan relaxed slightly. "Time is a luxury you don't have, but I'll give you a day. If I don't hear from you, I'll assume you're going to blow this wide open. And then, well, there will be consequences, for both of you." "Are you threatening me?" I asked, voice steady. He shook his head. "I'm warning you. There's a difference. If she's compromised, your life is in danger too. The people who handle us, they don't care about collateral damage." His words settled over me like a cold sweat. I glanced at his SUV, the tinted windows reflecting the dreary sky. Everything about this felt surreal, like I'd stumbled into a spy movie starring me as the hapless husband. But I wasn't hapless. I was furious, and I still held the final card. "All right," I said. "You'll get my decision in 24 hours. He gave a curt nod and slid into his vehicle. The SUV pulled away, leaving me standing alone in that forsaken lot. My chest burned, and I doubled over, pressing a fist to my sternum. The pain was back, sharper than ever, but I refused to let it cripple me. I forced myself upright, inhaled shaky breaths, and stared at the spot where he'd been. I drove home under the lowering clouds. When I arrived, I saw Elena's car in the driveway. The front door was ajar. My adrenaline spiked instantly. I rushed inside, bracing for some new confrontation, maybe a fight. But I found her seated at the kitchen table, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. She looked up as I entered, a tremor in her gaze. Her hair was still damp from a recent shower, or maybe from the continuing drizzle outside. I stayed near the doorway, crossing my arms. "Why are you here?" She stood slowly, as if uncertain I wouldn't shove her right back out. I had nowhere else to go. I let out a bitter laugh. "That's rich. The master spy has nowhere to go." Her lower lip trembled. "Michael, please. Don't use my name like that. Not after everything." She cast her eyes down. "You have every right to hate me. I needed to collect my things. then collect them and leave. My voice was ice, but I felt the weight behind my breastbone intensify. My body, or my soul, was screaming for an end to this. She glanced around the familiar kitchen, the counters and cabinets we once picked up together. Tears welled up, but she blinked them back. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. "I know it sounds hollow, but it's the truth. My work, it's complicated." The lines got blurred with Nathan. I was under strict orders. I held up a hand. "Stop." I paced a few steps, then turned on her. "What about the hotel in LA? You expect me to believe that was strictly business, that the moans I heard were just a part of your act?" Her face paled. "You followed me." She swallowed. "It wasn't. I didn't. The mission called for an intimate approach, but sometimes we took it further than we should have. I can't lie about that." A savage spike of pain hit my chest. I pressed my palm there, breathing shakily. She took a hesitant step forward, worry crossing her features. "Michael, are you?" "Don't come near me," I hissed. "Don't pretend you care about my well-being now." She stopped, arms hanging at her sides, fingers twitching. It wasn't supposed to go on this long. I was told it would be a short infiltration, gather intelligence on certain figures. But I got stuck in the middle of something bigger, and there was no easy way out. "That's your excuse?" I asked, jaw clenched. "You'd rather destroy our marriage than say no to your job." Elena's eyes flashed with a tortured look. "I was protecting you too. If I walked away, if I failed, they would have come after us. The threats are real." I stared at her, not sure if I wanted to laugh or break something. "So you sacrificed our happiness to keep us safe. Great plan." She looked away, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I know I'm the villain here. I accept that. I just want you to understand that I never stopped loving you. I only did what was necessary." 1,000 rebuttals fought in my throat. I could have yelled that love doesn't mean sleeping with another man. I could have demanded details of every lie she told me. Instead, I ground my teeth and turned away, swallowing a wave of nausea. "Pack your things," I said, voice shaking. "Get out. I've already shown the neighbors who you are. You're compromised. Now you and your boyfriend can figure out the rest. But leave me the hell alone." She lowered her head and moved upstairs to gather her belongings. I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, focusing on my breathing. The flicker of our old life haunted me. Lazy Sunday mornings, the time we binge-watched detective shows, the quiet companionship of reading side by side. I clenched my fists. That world was dead. As she came downstairs with a small suitcase, I noticed she'd left behind a few personal items. Photos, letters, mementos. Probably too risky to carry them around while she was on the run. She paused by the doorway, gaze flicking to me one last time, like a silent plea. I refused to meet her eyes. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut, and I was left in the hush once more, except for the faint patter of rain overhead. I exhaled, letting the tension drain from my limbs. The chest pain didn't subside, but I forced myself to move, to pace, to stay upright. I couldn't afford to collapse, not yet. I needed to decide my next step. I spent the afternoon in a strange haze, drifting from room to room. The quiet was oppressive, reminding me that I'd just destroyed my marriage in a single brutal confrontation. No, actually, it had been destroyed long before. I was simply the one pulling the final plug. Guilt warred with anger inside me. I sat in the living room, occasionally glancing at the front door, half expecting Elena to come back with some new explanation or final attempt at reconciliation. She never did. By late afternoon, the sky had darkened again. The phone rang, a jarring sound in the silence. I grabbed it, half hoping it would be a friend or coworker. Instead, I heard an automated voice. "Incoming restricted call." Then a beep. Nathan's voice came on. "Time's almost up. If you're planning to blow everything wide open, do it. But understand you're not the only one with evidence. I have enough on you. photos, contact logs, to spin the narrative however I want. I'd hate for your reputation to be collateral damage. I'm not threatening. I'm stating facts. Call me back with your decision. The line clicked off. My fingers shook. So this was it, the final blackmail. I laughed bitterly. We'd reached the point of no return. My wife's betrayal, the lover's threats, the agency's looming presence, all converging on one battered man in a suburban home. My chest throbbed, and for a moment, I actually wanted the pain to crush me, to end it all. But that was too easy. I rose, rummaging in the hall closet until I found a battered duffel bag. Inside were old notes, extra phone chargers, and some personal documents. I also found a small box containing items from my investigative days. Business cards, backup audio recorders, that sort of thing. My mind spun with possibilities. If I wanted, I could feed the entire story to a contact at the local paper or even a national outlet. The scandal would be enormous. Elena, Nathan, the covered ops group. They'd all be exposed. My name might end up tarnished, or maybe I'd come out looking like a heroic whistleblower. Hard to say. But then I remembered the fear in Elena's eyes, the heartbreak. And I remembered something else she once told me, back when we first got married. You can't break someone who has nothing left to lose. Was that how she justified her infiltration, her double life? Because she felt she had to protect me from a threat I never saw coming. My mind felt like a war zone. I took a deep breath, lifted my phone, and scrolled through contacts. I stopped on an old friend, Loretta, a private investigator who'd already helped me gather intel. Maybe she could guide me. But then I hesitated. Involving more people would raise the stakes further. If the agency behind Elena got wind of it, they might lash out. More lives in danger. Did I really want that on my conscience? I stared at the phone, a swirl of conflicting emotions. Part of me yearned to burn it all down, to let the entire truth out so Elena would suffer the consequences of her betrayal. But another part, the part that used to love her, whispered that she was already suffering, that exposing her fully might seal her fate or endanger innocent bystanders. In the end, I placed the phone on the table and buried my face in my hands. The dull ache in my chest flared again, bringing tears to my eyes that I refused to shed. I found myself muttering, voice shaking, I hate you, Elena. I hate what you did. But I don't want you dead. Dusk settled, the rain finally relenting. My phone screen glowed in the dim room. Nathan's contact info hovered, a single option for a callback. I picked it up, breathing heavily, and dialed. He answered immediately. Yes? I steeled my voice. I won't expose her. A pause. I see. But I'm not doing it for you. She's the mother of my unborn future, or at least she was supposed to be. She's the woman I married. So I'm letting her live. I want her gone. I want you both gone from my life. He let out a breath. Understood. I want her to get whatever new identity, new passport, new cover story, so she never shows up at my door again. That's your job, right? Disappearing people. Yes, he said quietly. We can arrange it. I swallowed, tears burning my eyes. I never want to see her face again. Understand. A beat passed. I understand. I ended the call without waiting for another word. Then I hurled the phone onto the couch and stumbled to the kitchen. My hands gripped the counter, and my chest burned with the ferocity of a blazing fire. My breathing was ragged, and the tears I'd been holding back finally came, silent and hot. I wanted to scream, but no sound emerged. In the weeks that followed, the hush in the house lingered like a ghost. At first, neighbors asked questions. Are you two okay? Where's Elena? I gave them a version of the truth. I said she'd run off, that she wasn't who we thought she was. I didn't spare the details about her double life. I wanted them to know I'd been betrayed. They looked shocked, sympathetic. Some probably thought I was having a breakdown, but it didn't matter. The seed was planted. Her name was tainted. She wouldn't be able to return here without people whispering. Surprisingly, no one from the agency came knocking. No black cars, no men in suits. It was as if she'd never existed, which, I suppose, was the plan. I took time off from work, telling my editor I had a personal crisis. He didn't pry. I stayed at home, drifting in a limbo of heartbreak and confusion. Some nights, I got lost in old photo albums. We had a life. Once, a real life. Weekend getaways, dinners with friends, silly inside jokes. Was any of it real, or was she always wearing a mask? My mind churned over these questions until dawn. The chest pain wouldn't leave. A part of me started to believe it never would, that it was my new companion. About a month later, I received a plain envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. She's gone. No one will bother you. No signature, but I recognized the blocky handwriting from the hotel ledger. Nathan's. I tore the note up and flushed it down the toilet, feeling a cold finality settle over me. In the end, I didn't get the dramatic resolution or the public vindication I once craved. My revenge was that I forced her out, exposed her, and took away her sanctuary, her normalcy. That was enough, I told myself. But at night, when I lie awake in the silent house, I'm not so sure. The anger has dulled into a hollow ache. Sometimes, I wish I could forget the sound of her moans in that hotel room, or the sight of that black t-shirt in her suitcase. But memory is a cruel thing. It doesn't let go easily. And so I live with it, day by day, a constant echo in the back of my mind. As for the pain in my chest, it remains. A doctor once told me it could be stress-related, anxiety, heartbreak. There's no magic pill for that. So I carry it with me, a reminder of what was lost. A reminder that not all wounds are visible, but they can eat you alive from the inside. I haven't seen Elena since the day she walked out with her suitcase, mask in hand. Sometimes I dream she returns, barefoot on the porch, rain pouring down her face, begging for forgiveness. In those dreams, I open the door, only to slam it shut again. Maybe that's the final cruelty, or maybe that's the only way I can survive. In the end, what have I learned? That trust is fragile, and lies are like acid. That love can turn bitter when stained by betrayal. That no matter how calm you stay on the surface, a storm can rage beneath, ready to swallow you whole. I suppose I'm alive, and that's something. But the man I was before, he died the moment I heard her laughter through that hotel door. Now I'm someone else. Someone who understands that not every betrayal comes with a gun or a blade. Sometimes, it comes with quiet moans in the night and a t-shirt that doesn't belong to you. I try to breathe through the pain, day after day, waiting to see if it ever fades. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But if there's one thing I know, it's that I'm still standing, however unsteadily, still telling my story in this cold, surgical manner. Because that's all I have left now, the truth, the emptiness, and the quiet beat of my heart echoing in the silence. The hush is absolute, except for the dull throbbing in my chest. And I live in that hush, step by step, breath by breath, waiting for whatever comes next. A part of me hopes there's more to life than this hurt, but another part wonders if the hurt is all that remains. Regardless, this is my reality, raw, unvarnished, and final. I've made my choice. She's gone. The neighbors know. I told them. Maybe in another life, we could have saved each other. But in this one, I've sealed the doors, locked them from the inside, and thrown away the key. The storm has passed, yet the scars it left behind won't let me forget. I am alone in a hollow house filled with memories that cut me in the dark. And that is all there is to it.